This is a frilled dragon. They live in the jungles of southern Indonesia, but what he lives in right now isn't that. So today we're gonna make a popwin paradise, and I'm gonna show you step by step how to bring the jungle into your living room. My goal in life is just to have a bunch of boxes that have jungles in them in my basement so I can come down here and look at cool animals and pretend I'm in the rainforest when I can't afford to actually go to one. Each part of the world is unique, and where Indonesian frilled dragons come from is the southern part of an island called Papua, formerly called Irian Jaya. Much in the same way that the Dominican Republic and Haiti inhabit one island but are two nations, Indonesia and New Guinea are on the island of Papua. Although Indonesia is also on Sulawesi and Borneo, and it's a huge place. Indonesia has to be the most fascinating place on Earth, and I can't wait to go back.
Maybe we'll cut that part out.
But for today, I'm gonna bring Indonesia to you. To the same place that you'd find blue-tongued skinks, like my Merauke blue-tongued skink Irwin, is the same place in the world that you'd find frilled dragons like Tilly. So I did some research, and in the national park in this area of Indonesia, the climate is wet. There's a dry season and there's a wet season, but in general, humidity is close to 80% almost every single day, some days getting centimeters or several inches of rain during the wet season. But even during the dry season, it's really humid, so that's what we're trying to do here. And to do that, we're gonna bring plants, the substrate is gonna be correct, the misting system is gonna be correct, and we're going to give Tilly as much roaming area as we possibly can. And then we're gonna put that enclosure right beside our other Indonesian dragon, Stitch. Stitch is a blue tree monitor, and we made an enclosure for her just last month. Two different parts of Indonesia at the back of this room. Let's go. The first thing we're gonna need to do is make a wall in this enclosure. We've already made the structure, which is just 3/4 inch plywood that we had measured and cut at Home Depot. They have a saw that can cut much more precisely than the little table saw that I have. I prefer to do it that way, and it's about $1 a cut. It cost me 12 bucks to get everything cut exactly perfectly for 2 enclosures. On the top, we cut out a hole. This is so that we can add a heat light and a UVB light and a grow light. And after we painted the box, we just stapled on some hardware cloth, 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. Then in the bottom, we put a tarp or a pond liner. And the reason I prefer a pond liner is because no matter how well you caulk the corners, it's not gonna matter. It will eventually start to leak and rot the wood. So we stapled a pond liner on the inside, and it goes up higher than the substrate's going to be, and then we're gonna overlap it with the next step, which is the cork background. I prefer a cork insulation as the background. This looks dark, so it almost looks like if you're across the room, you're looking into an abyss, like there are other things behind the enclosure. So it makes the enclosure look bigger, but the main thing for the animal, especially an animal that is arboreal like a frilled dragon, is they can use the climbing area. So this animal can climb on every part of the wall, meaning that they don't just climb on the bricks and the sticks and everything inside of the enclosure, but the walls themselves act as a place for them to actually perch, bask, and run around. The cork panels I screw in with wood screws, and I screw them in just enough that they don't go out the back. The enclosure is 3 feet wide by 2 feet deep by 6 feet high. So I'm using cork panels which are 3 feet long, which fit the back perfectly, no cuts required. And I layer 5 of them, one on top of each other, so they overlap the pond liner, and if any water drips, it doesn't drip behind the pond liner, it drips off of the cork into the substrate. And then for the side walls, there's a little bit of measuring and cutting involved, but you can do this with a skill saw or circular saw, or literally an X-Acto knife and score it and snap it. Keep in mind this stuff is dusty when you cut it, so use protection. I always have my trusty safety shoes on. With the background done, this is the fun part. Let's go look for sticks.
So for that, we'll take a quick trip to the woods and get ourselves some sticks.
It's like the opposite of Bigfoot because he's so little. Definitely not Dave Kaufman. What you got there?
I think this is gonna be too big.
That's what she said.
Some people buy a truck for work. I buy a truck so I can bring sticks home. Great success. We got a pretty sweet haul, and now it was time to bring home the box full of sticks, clean them off, and get ready to build.
Cut all the branches the way that you want them, place them in there, and then I just screw mine in from the outside, which makes the outside of the enclosure look really ugly, but it doesn't matter because it's gonna be up against a wall and the other side against another enclosure. What's important is when you shake the branches, they don't come loose. Keep in mind an animal is going to attach themselves and sit on these things, and it's really important that it is safe and they don't fall. Also keep in mind where the branch is in relation to the hotspot and the UVB. Once you have all your branches in, you want to make sure anything else that is going to require any sort of force or maneuvering is done before you plant it, which I'm going to do in 2 ways. But before that, I want to screw in nozzles so that it has a misting system. There's some really good misting systems out there, Mist King being one, Rainmaker Pro being another. Screw with the right drill bit into your enclosure, put your nozzles where they're supposed to be, and then we'll plumb it later. I learned from the last enclosure I need 5 nozzle points instead of 3. As you make these, you're gonna get better at it, so if it doesn't work out perfectly the first time, don't worry, it only gets better from here. If you're looking for the best mist system for you, head on over to my favorite, chewy.com. That's where I got my mist system, all the extra nozzles and tubing that I needed, and all the lights that I needed to make this enclosure possible too. Not to mention all the bugs that I'm gonna need to be feeding this crazy dragon, because boy does he eat. It's like a one-stop shop, so you don't have to go from one place to another place. Everything is all together, and it all shows up to your door. And if I haven't convinced you yet, we've got crazy deals right now, like buy Rodent Pro, get 20% off select substrates, or for your bugs for your dragon, Flukers is doing 35% off live feed until next Friday. Thank you so much, Chewy, for sponsoring today's episode. Now my favorite part, the plants. The plants are the fun part, and you should keep them being fun. Don't overthink it. There's a million ways to do it. You could actually go out and buy all the native plants to the jungle that you are trying to recreate inside of the enclosure. A lot of times this becomes tricky and expensive, and sometimes it doesn't really work that well. So for me, I just pick plants that I think look nice, and also I don't get too crazy about making it look neat and tidy. I want it to look like a jungle. And in the jungle, there are dead leaves, yellow leaves, there's foliage all over the ground that has died and shed off of trees. But also, I'm not gonna go as crazy as to make fake trees. So I'll take cork, I take some sphagnum moss or some tree fern in this case. I put the root ball of the plants on the cork, kind of like a slab, put more moss on top, wrap it with fishing line, and then it's good to go and ready to be put on the wall. And for this, I just use screws that are long enough that they're gonna go into the wood, but not all the way through because, well, that's just dangerous. For this, I picked a bunch of different types of plants, these Balettis. These grow a little bit too big, so I'm gonna keep it in here and maybe cut it back as needed. The string of turtles did so well in the other enclosure, I did another one in this enclosure too. And then some other plants I bought from the greenhouse that I don't really know what they are, I just know how they act when they're mounted. Put them in a way that is, to me, aesthetic looking. It doesn't have to be super naturalistic, but when you walk by it, you want people to stop and say, whoa, what the heck is that? But you don't want it so cluttered that when the plants grow that it's going to look ridiculous and you have to cut it back all the time. So at the beginning, it's going to look a little sparsely planted, and that's totally okay. It'll fill in. Also keep in mind, this is an animal that might shred some of these plants. It's not a heavy-bodied animal, but more heavy-bodied than a dart frog or something like that, where you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. And again, the wall is a climbing surface, so Tilly's gonna be able to climb all over the branches, maybe go down to the floor if he chooses, and crawl on the cork, and that way he can position himself exactly where you want the lights, and that is the next part. But before that, let's plant the bottom. For substrate, I used a mix of coconut core, coconut chip, sphagnum moss, topsoil, and peat moss. I just mixed it all up, brought it downstairs, dumped it in the enclosure, and I made sure that it was pretty high up the back wall, so it's kind of slanted that way. Plant the tall stuff in the back, plant the shorter stuff in the front. That is basically it, the same way that you'd plant a garden. A lot of these plants have been in my greenhouse for a long time, and I'm just looking for something to do with them, so they might not look the best or the freshest, but that's okay. They're gonna grow new foliage. They love these lights that we're gonna put on there. And then we'll cut them back and if needed, replant. At the end of the day, we try to make it look like a jungle, but it's not an actual jungle. It's an enclosure in your room that you can plant to make it look the way that you want it to look. And at the end, if you want, put some dead foliage or botanicals or something like that inside the enclosure on top, because it looks like natural. That's what a jungle looks like. And then a cleanup crew, isopods and springtails. Next, put the lights on. What I use are the Luminize from Arcadia. I love these because they dim up and down just like the sun. You can do it from your phone. It's fantastic. I've talked about them before, and you can link them together. And the linking mechanism screws on so it doesn't pull out. That annoyed the heck out of me with the old ones. Then the old school Arcadias for the UVB, and I put those right above the perch, and I make sure that I measure that that is the perfect UVB rating for this animal, the perfect Ferguson zone for my animal. In the UVB video I did a few weeks ago, I talked about how I needed a new UVB bulb for Tilly. Well, now he's got one. And the final step is to put your animal inside the enclosure and see how they react. But first, I need the glass, so we'll get to that tomorrow. Oh yeah, you'll need to put the tracks on. I use Gorilla Glue and clamps and tape, cut them to size, put them on, leave them for 24 hours. Then you're ready for glass. Glass picked up from the glass shop, put in, fits perfectly. Special tip here, use a silicone-based lubricant in the bottom track to let them slide freely and not get stuck. Now it's time to put Tilly inside, and he is absolutely loving his new enclosure. He looks a little timid and shy, but that's because he's in a brand new environment. He doesn't know what to expect. He has no idea. Oh, and there go the bugs. Let's let Tilly eat, and I want you to tell me in the comments, what animal should we make the next custom enclosure for?